Up next, our next session brings together founders building across some of India's most strategic deep tech frontiers, from aerial intelligence and space infrastructure to precision healthcare and industrial AI. These are sectors where deep science, engineering, and real-world deployment are increasingly attracting serious investor interest as India builds long-term strategic capabilities. Please join me in welcoming Vipul Singh, co-founder and CEO, Aereo; Yashas Karanam, co-founder and COO, Bellatrix Aerospace; Hitesh Goswami, co-founder and CEO, Forbase Care; and Niharika Kolte Alekar, founder and CEO, Volar Alta. And moderating this conversation is Ashish Taneja, founding partner and CEO of growX Ventures, one of India's early institutional backers of deep tech and science-led startups. Can we have a huge round of applause in welcoming all of them on stage to a very anticipated session? Hi. Hello and welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. We got, what, 40 minutes? Yeah, let's kind of make it work. Get straight deep dive. Everyone here, the previous session as well, you pick up any newspaper, deep tech, sovereign tech, strategic missions, this is what being talked about, right? All of you been at the frontier edge of technology, building businesses for the last several years, yeah? And before we kind of get started with the conversation, I want each one of you to reintroduce yourself. And I don't want to talk about your name, your company, or the title you hold. Talk about the strategic capability that you've already built or in the process of building that we as a country, we as a nation should be proud of. Niharika, आप बॉम्बे से आए हो तो आपसे शुरू करेंगे and ये तो तीनों बैंगलोर से आए, who cares about Bangalore, right? So all yours.
Thank you for having me. We're building the layer of intelligent inspections for the industries that are the backbone of any country's economy, like cement, chemicals, steel, oil and gas, and power. And that is the thing that we're building from India for the world.
Ashish, I'm very sure you're pretty much aware, but I think I'll just try to keep it very short and very this thing. So one of the key areas that Bellatrix is working on is basically propulsion. As you're aware, India is, if you're looking at missile tech or submarine tech or like even rockets and all that, right? One area where India has always fallen behind is actually the engine technology or the propulsion technology. That is one area where majority of the money has gone into tech transfers and still we don't have 100% of all the building blocks. And when we were students, somehow we actually got very interested in working on propulsion as part of our college project. And then we had built a rockstar dream, and then we decided if we have already started something in this, why don't we just experiment as entrepreneurs, try to build a company which specializes in building propulsion tech from the drawing board. So that was one thing that we started upon, and then we realized like...
We'll pause.
Yeah.
We'll pause. Just a description, you're doing propulsion engines, something which is rare in India, yeah? Okay. Hitesh?
Hi Ashish, hello everyone. So we are trying to do something very spicy, trying to marry AI with healthcare. AI with healthcare, right? The relationship has not been that great, so we're trying to fix that. So we are trying to build a deep tech precision oncology platform using genomics, AI and real world clinical intelligence to personalize cancer care for patients in India and emerging markets.
So we use drones, AI, and a lot of vertical specific knowledge to solve for operational efficiency in some very specific industries which are extremely dull, dirty, dangerous, and have repetitive jobs. Now, these industries are at the foundation of any economic growth like mining, power, renewable energy, where the size of the project and the operational intensity on day-to-day basis is so humongous that keeping a track on what's happening, whether it is as per the required quality and speed standard or not, that is what we help track these businesses so that they can take better decisions. So it helps capital deliver result much better than what it would deliver without these insights.
So interesting mix, propulsion engines, drones, AI in healthcare, genomics, AI in overall aerial intelligence and stuff like that. What I want to spend time on, over the next 20, 30 minutes is look back into the past. A lot of you guys started 10 years, 12 years, 13 years ago, some more recent. Talk about the current present and spend a lot of time painting through what the future could look like, right? And let's say this week alone, yesterday, the technology board announced their first list of projects they've approved, some 500-600 crores behind DeepTech projects. Last year, the Research and Development Innovation Fund got announced, 1 lakh crore. SIDBI has got 10,000 crores to kind of push the DeepTech agenda. We're seeing unicorns in space tech, and I'm sure other fields, we're talking about, and this is all the last 3-4 years, right? And on top of it, we got a strategic mission for just about all critical capabilities. There's something for space, in space, Antariksh Fund, you chair the Drone Federation, so there's something happening there. Semiconductors, genomics, I'm sure will pick up. Across the board, we're putting true talent behind driving the agenda forward, yeah? But I want to understand from you that today, you guys started earlier, so don't go back into the past. How do you feel about where we are? From your perspective, are we at an inflection point to expect scale happening over the next 5-10 years, right? Are there still things which are broken, right? As builders, right? That you would like to fix as an entrepreneur, as a contributor to the ecosystem, bring that out. And Niharika, again, let's just kind of start with you and bring that flavor, and then Hitesh will come to you. Yeah.
So when I started in 2020, from the user perspective, our customers are typically in the cement, chemicals, heavy industries, right? At a time when everyone's talking about Industry 4.0, now 5.0, people were still using paper and pen to do their jobs, right? So starting from there and now finally coming to a place where users have started understanding the ROI that technology is able to help them achieve for their own P&L, that is when the shift kind of began. And then that is where we started seeing better technology adoption and stuff like that. But having said that, are we in a place where AI can be adopted seamlessly? The answer to that is an emphatic no, because so many things are broken in the entire value chain that you have to start from the very basic, digitize first, and then think of AI. So most of our customers are now on that path, but it will be a while before we can actually embrace fully.
Can you define the while? Is it 20 years from now? Are we talking about 2 years? Sometimes the definition of while also varies, right? So.
See, it's a little hard for large organizations to just bring about the change. So at least 2 to 3 years till we get to a place where, okay, we have the right ingredients to deploy advanced technologies. I wouldn't say 20 years for sure, because yeah, I think 2 to 3 years to get your foundation in place, and then
right.
Better
are you
adoption.
feeling the change? You said the conversations are different today, because people are seeing ROI. So it's all about saying, this is my tech, this is the problem I'm solving. Give me an opportunity to do a couple of trials or proof of concept, and things change in your favor.
Yes, with a few customers, yes. With a few customers, no.
Okay. Yeah.
So, for example, proof of concept is becoming a big, for the lack of a better word, a scam, so to say.
Scam.
Because aaj ki bhi date mein, when you've already deployed drones from the last 5-6 years,
yes.
if your customers are still asking you to proof of concept, up free mein kar do types.
Huh.
So then that is a little discouraging for most
Right.
of the startups. I'm sure
Right.
people will agree also.
Huh.
I'm just being very candid here.
Yeah, no, that's the idea. That's the idea. Yeah.
But that is the reality of our
Right.
industry
So
as well. So
essentially, what you're saying is what we're reading about
Yeah.
versus what the reality is. We
It's
still
a
have.
little different,
It's a
yes.
little different. Hitesh, your perspective. You know, you work with a lot of large hospitals, pharma companies, and in India and globally as well. But talk about the Indian context. Where are we today? What's different?
I think the market is maturing quite fast, especially, and like I mentioned earlier, when we started AI and healthcare, we had not seen that working very well, right? And in healthcare, what we've realized that it's not an AI problem, but it's a data problem. And current challenges is also that a lot of the AI models which have been developed are based on the Caucasian data, right, or a different data set, which does not work necessarily well over here. And that is what people have started to realize, that you need to work on diverse data. And another thing which has changed is that where we always thought that when it comes to AI and data, the data has to be very large, right? And large language models would work, which would work in a lot of other industries, but industries like healthcare, drug discovery, we are looking at smaller data sets, but comprehensive data sets, which has clinical context to it. So we are seeing a lot of maturity, which is there in the market, a lot of learning from the West, which is happening for us in India. And like I said, maturity in terms of realizing that we need our own data sets. And hospitals, doctors, when you talk to them, they do ask us that how this would be different if we are working on our data, how this would be different working on our data. So we see that maturity, and I think 10 years from now, disease like cancer, it's not going to be any revolutionary technology or a magic pill which is going to solve cancer, but how we use AI and data in the next 10 years to match the right patient to the right treatment every time going to have a difference.
You know, the point you're making is, you know, you started 2018-ish.
Right.
You know, you started 2020. The biggest change which we're seeing is AI and the evolution.
Right.
So, and I was bringing the context that at a country level, are we at a different place? And you know, none of you have so far responded if the needle's moved in that direction. None of the, you know, initiatives which are underway or have been in progress for the last several years, you're not seeing benefits of that yet. Is that?
No, we are now
Yeah.
starting to see the benefits.
Huh.
So there are companies which have developed fantastic AI models on radiology data, right, which is being used now. So especially from a healthcare perspective, we are seeing that change, we are seeing that maturity.
Right. Okay, interesting. I want to just take a couple of minutes and go back to the past as well. And you know, Vipul and Yashas started much before you guys started. And you know, you said a lot of people consider, you use the word scam in connection, for the lack of a better word, but Vipul would have actually experienced that. You know, when did you start? 2015? 13.
13.
Oh, मैं तो जवान था तब. तो
You had black hair that time. You used to have black hairs that time.
No, I used to color my hair back then, but that's okay. So 2013, you know, you were one of the early guys getting into drones, right? And you know, Yashas, you started maybe a year, two later, 2015, and putting propulsion engines. But at that point of time, there was zero ecosystem. You know, there were no components available, there were no design capabilities available, there was no manufacturing. What were the struggles, what were the challenges? And if you were to fast forward the world back then and redo your business, start again all of a sudden, what's different?
See, I will talk about the previous question as well. What are the broken stuff, right? The mindset has significantly changed. I would say there is a significant shift in the mindset and the risk appetite back then versus today in the entire value chain. When we were back then, getting a proper PCB printed in, let's say, 5 numbers or 10 numbers was impossible. Okay, and funding was not there. Whenever we reached out to most of the VCs, we were considered as science project. That is an academic science project with no commercial viability proven. And the other phenomena which was existing at that point of time is that we were looking at indigenization of anything which existed in the West. So we need a business or a model or a solution which has been benchmarked in the West. If you are bringing a local version of that, bingo. So many examples are there. So we had our own struggles in terms of access to funding. Such kind of R&D grants didn't exist. VCs were handful, especially at seed stage. There were still VCs at late stages. Nothing was there. So raising capital that too adequate. The worst part is that if you have no capital, you still figure out how to sustain, right? When you have less than required capital, then
yes.
you are neither here nor there, you know.
Right.
You can't really move at the right pace, plus you
Right.
can't justify the capital
Right.
return also.
Yes,
So
yeah.
many things happen. So I think that has significantly changed the number of investors. Also, the appetite in the large conglomerates, I will say, has changed significantly towards the entrepreneurs. Earlier, getting access to the decision makers in these large conglomerates with an innovative solution was very, very difficult, and everything was benchmarked against the labor prices. Today, at least they understand the value of the tech, they give it a try. Of course, there is a certain other aspect which needs to get fixed. And these kind of funds have also moved. Earlier, if you look at in our days, Yashas can also, add to it. A lot of R&D grants were going into the academic ecosystem. A lot of government labs with no accountability of any outcome. Right? Because it was easier dumping of money in the name of R&D with no one accountable for any results. So that has significantly changed, that you're not giving money for some paper concept, but you're giving money for something which is already beyond concept stage and now needs to get industrialized, and you're funding basically productization instead of just some conceptual fundamental research, right? So that is a very major shift, because that will bring industrial output somewhere at a very good level compared to the accountability which used to exist at that point of time. Now what needs to get fixed is that, see, you're giving money for entrepreneurs to build these things. Most of entrepreneurs who are working in deep tech, their motivation is not to pump up the valuation and take a fat exit. The motivation is to solve problems which no one else is really attempting to solve and feel proud about it. Take the responsibility of fixing broken things in the country, right? For all of us, the motivation has been that. I don't like this broken and I take the responsibility to solve it. But then let's see, if you're going through, I'll give an analogy. Let's say you're going through a very critical heart surgery and you expect the world's best surgeon to come and do your surgery. And then you make him drive a car through an extremely traffic zone and harass him on the way for 1 hour and expect him to come with that mindset of doing a surgery on you.
Yes.
It doesn't work. So what is happening wrong right now, which needs fixing, is procurement. Everywhere, in the private enterprises, government enterprises, procurement is absolutely not aligned with the goal which we are setting for deep tech in this country. You are making deep tech founders go through unique deep tech founders who don't have a parallel solution to go through 3 bidding process. You need to have 3 bids. You need to have L1 pricing. And over and above that, last 3 years, it has gone worst.
Worse.
We are asking them to do reverse auction.
Reverse auction, yes.
That we will make 3 deep tech founders compete with each other with a race towards the bottom, with absolutely no margin left to even finance any extra overheads, forget about R&D, right? So it's a death trap.
So this debt trap.
And with more capital, I'll just add one thing. When you have more capital in the hands of these founders, then you also expect them to deliver growth. So what happens? The desperation to get orders increases.
So, ये जो आपने example लिया, कि this heart surgeon is going for a surgery, there's a traffic situation, people on the road are harassing. Where are VCs? What is VC's role in this example? Are we the people who are harassing? Are we the people who are driving? Are we the people of the car? Who are we? The investors in this ecosystem. Are we playing a good support role, and is there patient long-term capital available, is my question.
See, I think VCs are also ultimately going to become a victim of this.
Victim of this?
Yes.
Okay.
At one point of time. Because see, you have a 5-7 year cycle. You want the startups to grow and show profitability, right? With that desperate situation where revenue has to be brought at any cost, and if you make them, let's say, go through a race towards the bottom, revenue will come with no margin. So will the VCs make return out of it? So I think the VCs need to join the bandwagon of the founders like us and go and tell the government to fix these procurement policies, and also not the government but the private enterprises as well.
But we'll come to this procurement policies, and especially because you chair the Drone Federation, so I'm sure you have an influence. Yashas and Rohan, his co-founder, he does the same, and I'm sure Niharika and Hitesh, they have a role to play. So we'll cover that. But Yashas, just bring your story. And to Vipul's point, when he was talking about his long cycle, yours, I would imagine, is even more difficult, because the only client you had was an ISRO and a DRDO, right? So he's working with private companies, large companies, they move a lot faster, but you working with these, public sector organization, yes, they're known for innovation and stuff like that, but kind of getting them to deliver is a different struggle. So bring that aspect as well.
I think for us, the good thing was, as Vipul was saying, when you don't have capital, it is easy to run the show, right? We had got our first order from ISRO while we were still in college, and then what we realized was, I mean, we were very happy we didn't sit to placements, and then we got onto this bad wagon. Then we realized, I think all the payments are going to come in the end.
Right.
You'll have to get the money for yourself, deliver, get up the facilities, get the whole setup running, and there was probably a lot on the plate than we thought. And then also at the customer level, we had issues, right? Because space tech was very new, and there were hardly two space tech companies. One of them was doing some education programs for students. One of them was actually the Team Indus, which was actually doing the lunar mission. Apart from that, there were actually no other space tech companies in the country at all. So even for the customer to accept that there is one company which can really build complex hardware like propulsion, that was a challenge, mostly because ISRO themselves had got tech transfer of this particular technology from Russia and all that, and it was very distinct. So getting the customer to see that the sector is opening up, and especially when the customer themselves looks at us as a competition, that was a different era. But then after we came in, it took them like 8 to 10 years to start accepting orders from other companies. Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem.
And after this, what we realized was, even with investors, we were the first ones going around in the market pitching for space tech. So it took us probably around 3 years or higher to get any investment. So that was a bigger struggle, and then showing investors that there is this one sector coming up where the model has worked in the US and somebody has to build the cat first, right? That was a different thing. And policy was another question mark. If you were to actually run a space tech company and say you want to launch a satellite, launch a rocket, I was absolutely not sure if I would end up in jail, right? And today that clarity has come. And till 2018, if you see, there were hardly 5-6 space companies in the country, and today there are over 400.
Yeah, 400 companies.
Yeah, the massive thing has come from the policy shift and all the funding which is coming in. And where actually the challenge is actually coming in is in terms of customers giving us orders. The Indian government still thinks that if they announce some sort of fundings and open up the sector with policy, companies can survive. But it is, if you look at models in Europe and US, it is actually the local market which has funded these companies in the beginning. That's the gap I'm seeing.
No, we'll definitely talk about that. Or maybe we talk about that. You know, we've gone through these long cycles, but deep tech inherently means that you're chasing a global market, right? All of you now have these global customers, you know, you're kind of chasing, but the first several years was solving in India, catering to the local client, right? And sometimes I imagine that had you put this kind of effort, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, building what you built in the US or in the Europe, you would have been sitting on hundreds of millions or billions of revenues, forget the valuation, right? So that's the stark difference between market, right? And when did you realize that, you know, you should start spending time global? And I want to talk about the right to win. We keep saying deep tech, we want to do it in India, but what is truly India's right to win? And I don't want 4 founders who kind of doing excellent work. As a country, you know, how do we make the needle move? You know, some examples, some thoughts around building in India for the globe. Hitesh?
I think as founders, what we need to understand during global expansion is to understand the markets where you can actually expand. Not everything is going to give you the same returns. Like not always US or Europe market is the best market. So for example, in healthcare, where it is regulatory driven, there are already players in the US and Europe which are part of that regulatory system. For us to go and break it, then become a part of it, it's going to be very difficult. But what we realized is that whatever we're doing in India, whatever building in India, there are a lot of other developing economies within Southeast Asia, Middle East, Central Asia, where we are seeing the gap. And surprisingly, you'll be surprised by this, from healthcare perspective, today India is better than many of these countries. And these countries are following and looking up to what India is doing. And that's the opportunity that we have. So when we go to Philippines, when we go to Middle East, we go to Uzbekistan, right? These places, they actually adopt to what we are bringing because they have that trust in the Indian healthcare system. So it's very, again, so the bottom line is that you need to understand where you want to expand globally. And there are opportunities which are available. And I think from the healthcare perspective, again, I can say for India and from the AI, we can become the AI laboratory for the world because of the kind of diversity that we have in the data. Okay, our population represents a lot of other populations, right, in terms of genetic diversity. The volumes that we have, and I think the maturity and the clinical context that the doctors have, we have the opportunity to do that and build from here, and that's what we are doing. We are leveraging on that.
Niharika, you want to add on to that? From your business, are you seeing a global opportunity? Are you seeing appetite from emerging markets or developed markets for your kind of solutions?
Yes, so last year through India AI, we were one of the 10 startups who were part of the Global Acceleration Program, and we were in Paris for 3 months. That gave us an opportunity to speak with certain large global enterprises and showcase our product. The one thing I realized was actually two things. The first thing is in India, I used to feel that probably our product is at a basic level, but the same product when showcased to global enterprises, they were able to see the value, they were able to appreciate the value. But when you sort of take the same product back home, then you, instead of looking at what is on the table, what is not on the table is what is discussed, right? So perception of value is a lot higher. Maybe the sales cycle would still be the same because it's Europe at the end of the day, so the long sales cycle will remain. But adoption of technology is again much faster because they're already at some point, further ahead of India when it comes to digital transformation.
You're saying adoption is better, but the other point you made, and maybe Hitesh was also referring to that the product is perceived far better than what's available in the local markets as well. So,
Yes.
what each one of you and the others have built is obviously gold standard. And it's just that we've not tested and taken it out in a good manner outside. Yeah. I just want to go back again, and Vipul spoke about these journeys are long, right? You've stayed through the course for 13 years. You've done similar time. You're putting in your time as well. And in this, I think both Vipul and Yashas spoke about raising capital is tough for these deep tech. Still is, still is finding the right kind of people. I remember looking at your MIS. You had 1 month runway for 6, 7, 8 months consecutive. I don't know kya karta tha, kahan se paisa aata tha, ek mahina nikal jata tha. I remember your case, a very small amount, and I would want you to talk about that amount. Literally saved your ass. Got the company back in going, and now you're seeing some growth. Hitesh, you've seen it. You started around COVID. Just kind of talk about what those experiences were, what are the learnings, and what I want to know is how do you make sure you keep a strong face, be resilient, and stay committed to the course. You've got to carry your team, you've got to carry your stakeholders, you've got to keep delivering with literally nothing, right? So what is it? Just some examples and the stories would be great. Yashas, 1 month runway. You want to start, then maybe Hitesh can chime in.
Well, I think what kept us alive at that time was literally hope, right? Because there was visibility. We knew paisa idhar se aayega, sabhi jagah atka tha. That was the main thing. And we continued to pursue, and then get the whole thing for runway. But the only trade-off that we really felt bad was we could have done a lot more if we had cash at that time, right? We spent so much time balancing out whatever minimal we could do with that kind of a runway. Of course, I think the tech team kept doing its stuff, but then we had to restrict purchases, I mean, basically innovation was taking a bit of a hit during those months. That was the bad part. But generally as entrepreneurs, what I say is the moment you take a decision and then decide that, no, I don't have a bandwidth, I have to take a call, then you essentially end up winding up and then the story ends there. But somehow if you keep persevering, keep trying any small thing, request, I mean, it's a humbling journey also because you keep trying every other aspect to somehow get it done. But at the end of the day, somehow things might work out. I mean, a fight till the last minute is what I say.
And we're still fighting. Yeah. Niharika, you want to add something?
I think it's the mad belief in your vision in the company and the fact that this is what you've chosen and you're going to show up no matter what. I think this one thing pushes you and ensures that you figure a way out. Because like Vipul was saying earlier, you either are bootstrapped or you're well-funded. I'm bootstrapped. Somehow we figure a way out to survive and grow. But it's the mad belief that keeps you on track.
And I'm sure similar stuff, Vipul's keen to add something, huh?
I think there have been several instances like that.
How many times were you close to zero money in your bank account?
Maybe 6, 7 times.
6, 7 times. Incredible.
6, 7 times. And the only factor I feel kept us going was one common thing, not only in founders, but also the team which we had was obsession. That you are so obsessed about continuing to build this that if you don't have salaries coming in for a couple of months, it doesn't matter. But it's not very sustainable when the team becomes big.
It's not.
Because you can't have that obsession in everyone.
Right.
The other thing which I would highlight that, having investors who understand that obsession and also understand how the trajectory of some deep tech companies might look like, very, very important. Because if you recall that period you were referring to, we had a term sheet from some family office, which I will not name. COVID came, they were into certain type of businesses which affected, and it was SHA getting signed after 2 days and they pulled out of the deal, right? We were like left high and dry with a lot of commitments, offices, this, that, hirings done. It was just 50 lakh rupees which saved our ass at that time. Just 50 lakh rupees. We told our entire team of 40 people that this is what we have got. We'll ration it across all the people. You start shifting your houses, start living together so that your expenses can come down. And people did that during that COVID period. They moved houses, stayed together. We all used to cook together and eat together so that to keep the budget low. And we survived through that. And this is where we are. But if you look at even today, we face situations like that. We did so much of massive work for government where we have mapped more than 70,000 villages for the country for land record modernization. You'll not believe that we have more than 1.5 years of our revenue still stuck in receivables with these government departments, and we have to bang our head with these bureaucrats for silly reasons to get that payment out. And it puts a lot of stress. I mean, do you really want to go solve that next math algorithm, or you want to go around the babus asking why you should give my money which is spending from last 1.5 years and becoming a threat for my survival? And I can't spend on my R&D just because cash is strapped. So I think one of the things I would really boldly call out that it should be criminalized.
Criminalized?
Yes.
Achha.
If any bureaucrat is responsible for holding the money of the entrepreneurs beyond a certain period, it should be a criminal act. Because you are basically killing the country indirectly.
That's true. That's true.
Every such solution not coming out and not going in the hands of the public because of you not paying on time is a criminal act. It should be declared a criminal act.
No, I agree, and absolutely. But you're right. This is our culture. This is how we are as a nation, and it takes time to change, right? We're a large enough nation. But when we say large nation, we spoke about capital, but sometimes I feel a bigger issue is talent. We all believe that we are a nation of 1.5 billion or maybe 1.6. We keep adding a few hundred every day. So, but talent नहीं है. आपको मिलता नहीं है अच्छे बंदे, आपको मिलते नहीं है, आपको मिलते नहीं है, आपको मिलते नहीं है. Where are these people? Because we say India's strength is we have high quality engineers. We have all the skills we need to kind of build these deep tech companies, but all of you struggle. Isn't that a big pain point or a biggest challenge for you guys to scale companies? Vipul, you disagree?
I don't think there is a problem of availability of talent. Talent is not available in India, or those kind of talents are not willing to take the risk with smaller companies. See, all the R&D centers of all the big companies are today flourished by Indian diaspora, right? There is no dearth of talent in India. The other issue is that our academic system needs to change. What we are stuck with is curriculum which is very academic, not even close to what industry needs. So if we fix these two things where people's mindset to work with these smaller organizations changes, coming out of the service mindset to more of a product mindset, and secondly, fixing the academic itself. I think 4 years BTech is waste, literally waste. If I would have focused of scoring more in my BTech, I would have not been sitting here, to be very frank. Last 2 years, I did nothing in college other than building what I wanted to build. So I think first 2 years you teach the fundamentals, next 2 years you send them out in the industry to work with the industry people, automatically all the alignment will happen. By the time they are ready to get employed, they will be actually employable. Today they are qualified to be employed but not employable.
Yashas, thoughts?
Well, I mean, it is a kind of a mixed answer here because I cannot completely say that there are no good people in India. There are really good people, but what effectively I have seen is there are not a lot of self-starters, right? So
Self-starters.
people come in, they are motivated when they join, and then once they learn the basic work, they know how it is done. A lot of them get bored of it and they want to do something else. That consistency and maintaining one particular field of line, that is somehow not there. I mean, I'm not saying it is wrong, but that is something that we as founders face as an issue. Right.
No, okay, interesting. So one last thought, and maybe then we can take one or two questions. And I asked this question before. If India wants to be a deep tech nation, right, we're going to be known for strategic capabilities, built on time, gold standard. What is missing? What do we need to do? How do we charge up the nation? Niharika?
I don't think it's any one, you can't pinpoint to some one
Fair.
factor, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of things are broken across the value chain, across the supply chain. We need to kind of try and fix each so that we come full circle.
If
and
you're
we're
given the
able to-
responsibility to pick one to fix,
As an
he's doing procurement cycles and
Yeah, as an
payment cycles.
entrepreneur, I think top line is the most important,
Top-
right?
yeah,
So,
so demand-
definitely, yes,
demand
yes,
generation.
100%.
Yashas, anything?
Um, well, I think, see, sorry, just maybe I might have got the question wrong. If you could just repeat that.
No, I'm
again.
just saying,
Yeah.
we as a nation wants to be known for our deep tech prowess, right? So,
Right,
what do we
right.
need to fix? How do we need to get there? And
So mostly what we need to solve for is the fundamentals, right?
Fundamentals.
That's what I think we believe in. Our entire business model is around subsystems, because in India, if you want to build a satellite today, almost all the parts are imported, and then you
Yes.
do the assembly and testing in the
Yes.
country. And I see that in a lot of other sectors where core machineries we don't have, because we simply cite that the scale is not there. But if we really take it up as a business, we are now exporting. That scale comes once you take the step. That's-
okay, Hitesh?
I think over here, for any nation, it's government that plays a very important role. And I think RDI fund is a good first step towards building a deep tech nation. But just giving funding is not enough, like what we were discussing, right? That government has much important role to play. How are you supporting the deep tech innovations which are coming from this fund? Are you able to allow us to implement within these systems, within the government hospitals, within the government systems? They need to not just give the funding, but allow us to generate revenue also, because at the end of the day, the company grows with revenue, not just the funding. So I think giving those preference to the deep tech companies from India into government things is what is required.
Last, time's up.
I'll just give 3 pointers. One, place outcome before process. Everything in this country will get fixed, forget about deep tech. Second, second, we need to also parallelly make sure that people with context are put in the positions of decision, not people who are not having context. Because if you ask an economics graduate bureaucrat to take a decision on space tech, it's not going to work ever. So people with context should be sitting on the decision-making positions. That will solve another thing. Third is the academic alignment. We have national goals on one side, entrepreneurs on other side, and academic curriculum on the other side. We need to make sure that all three are aligned.
Very important. Okay. I don't know if you have time for. Yes, go ahead. Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah, you. I think time's up. Just one question.
Great discussion. Very quickly. So for deep tech, the gestation periods are quite long. So how are you seeing the appetite of VCs or PE companies in terms of patient capital here? And secondly, China is doing a great job in deep tech. US is doing a great job. So what are the 3 things we can learn from US in terms of private role? And what can we learn from China in terms of government role in developing deep tech in those countries?
Can I? Okay. I think the difference between China, US and India is only one. They trust their entrepreneurs, we don't. We think everyone is a thief. Okay, that's why you put so many processes to prove that are you genuine or not. Okay, and in that process of proving yourself genuine, you actually end up losing so much of efficiency, right? So I think we need to start trusting the entrepreneurs, that they choosing to enter in deep tech itself is a confirmation that they're taking that hard route to fix something in your favor only, right? That is one thing which I believe that has to be fixed. And yes, the appetite of VCs and PEs have significantly changed. Earlier, people were only looking at P&L to fund banks or VCs or anyone else. Today, what has happened is, or GMVs for that matter, today at least people understand what is TRL, right? And they can benchmark the progress of any technology with respect to the stages of TRL, not all of them, but that education needs to maybe spread more, that what a TRL means and what a particular stage means in terms of commercialization, right? So I think there is a lot of VCs which have changed their way of looking at the technology, and also many operators have become VCs also. So that context has also come into that ecosystem, but we need more.
I'll just add over here. So if you look at China, there's unlimited support of the government. If you look at, so China does not let other innovation come inside, right? They support the entrepreneurs like that. If you look at US, the amount of funding that you get at seed stage is unbelievable. Their government funding itself as grants is more than our Series A funding, right? In India, we lack both. So we need to bring those changes.
We've got time to go, but we're on the right track. But thank you very much. This was a very insightful conversation. Thanks very much for your time, and thanks for being a patient audience. Yeah. Can we, everyone's available. We have another session right after this. आप मिल लो, बात कर लो सबसे, सब मिलेंगे आपको. All of us are here. We just, बाद में. Thank you.
So 2014, we had exactly one private space tech company in India. Today we have more than 400, a sign of a shift in times. Thank you so much to our panelists for that fascinating, very candid discussion on what it really takes to build in some of the country's most complex frontier sectors. Thank you all so much. And on behalf of TIE Delhi-NCR, we'd like to now present all our speakers with a small token of our appreciation. Can we have a huge round of applause, please? Thanks, Ashish, for that wonderful moderation too.